Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of UnWoke Academy. You'll notice that this one is remarkably different than most other episodes, and that is because we're without power here at our corporate HQ. We had some major storms roll through, some power lines are down, and I'm told we have several days without power, but I'm not going to let that stop me from getting out an exciting episode of UnWoke Academy. So I want to touch on sort of the typical narrative a little bit and talk about how to escape the narrative. So if you're one of those people, and I've mentioned this before, but think of it kind of contextually and think of it as as kind of a category. Yes, I know it's distracting. I sort of have the lighting is bad in this makeshift studio, but bear with me here. We've got some important points to cover about how to go unwoke and the narrative. I'm just going to call it the narrative. So if you're one of those people who during the COVID fear was starting to see some things from your K through 12 education as a parent or grandparent or guardian, that you started to sort of question, like, what in the heck, you were expecting great things from K through 12 education, especially considering how much money we put into our education system in the US. But you started to see some things during COVID that had you kind of scratching your head a little bit. You're not alone. There were a lot of people who all of a sudden balked at what's being presented as education. That's an air quote, education in K through 12. And then during COVID, we had a lot of pressure. It was massive social pressure to get everybody to roll up their sleeves and agree to the jab. And then it became the booster and then the follow-on booster. I've lost track now. I think we're up to whatever, 9 or 10 or 11 boosters. I've lost track. So in 3 years, supposedly everyone is supposed to go every certain number of months and get the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th in infinitum. I think that's Latin. If I'm saying that correctly, on and on and on. You're supposed to be getting these jabs, but a lot of people, unsurprisingly, they started to see some really bad changes in the narrative. So it started in K through 12 with people viewing what their children were being exposed to online. And it started with the jab and medicine, with people seeing things like the change in the definition of the word vaccine. So in 2021, of all times, the definition of the word vaccine was changed, and people started to really question, or at least a lot of people. And people were just saying, this isn't right. There's something wrong about what's being presented here. And I want to make the point again that finance is no different. That having spent years very immersed in Wall Street. I just have to air quote that again, with the Wall Street, a globalist bank ideologies. There's a narrative there, and the narrative is broken. The narrative is very, very bad. So just one of thousands and thousands of case in point to highlight that point. A few months ago, Justin Bernier was my guest on this program. He is from the National Security Index, and he talked, among other things, about this kind of revolving door between Wall Street and Washington, D.C. politics. But he also touched on something called the CPA report, which delves into a practice known as offshoring. They're offshore managers for companies like these mega money managers, these investment managers. They have offshore managers, and they're investing via those offshore managers into things like the expansion of communist China's military. And quite literally, they're able to highlight how American investment dollars are bypassing embargoes. So I want to be clear about what that means. There are some companies out there that are blocked from US dollars being directly involved and engaged, understandably. So you couldn't, for instance, if you had a lot of money, go and plunk down a bunch of money and invest in the Chinese Communist Party's military ambitions. But via things like your IRA, your 401k, and the mutual funds, and things like mutual funds, exchange traded funds, etc., that are often found in your 401k plan and IRA and brokerage, etc., through those investment vehicles. They've found how some of these managers are bypassing the embargo. And that means that we the people, with all of our good intentions and hard work and savings, we're scraping together and we're trying to save wisely for a good retirement, and we're being manipulated. We're being fed a narrative. And I just saw one actually a few days ago. There's a politician who was talking about how the lines are kind of blurred and you can't really tell what's a Chinese company and which is the Chinese Communist Party. And that's not really true. It's a disingenuous answer from this politician, or more likely, this politician, not knowing any better, is being fed a line of you know what from his advisor. It is possible, because any company that allows for investment from US dollars is required to disclose relationships. And so you can see cash flow, and you can see, for instance, companies within China who are going to the Chinese Communist Party, and they're getting funding and bonding, they're getting lines of credit, et cetera, et cetera. That should be an immediate red flag. And that's just one example. There are many, many, many examples. So on a more local level, when we look at the things and companies that we might choose to boycott, and there's a lot of that going on, because let's face it, the woke left, the wokadoodles, are exerting pressure on corporations to behave a certain way. We're seeing it with a lot of companies that are being pulled, they're being forced to pull their ad revenue from platforms like the social media platform X, formerly Twitter. We're seeing it in corporate behaviors like adopting these crazy far left, wacky marketing schemes that alienate a lot of people. That's being done not at the corporate level. Those corporations, left on their own, of their own devices, aren't doing that because they believe in it. They're actually being forced to do that, in my asserted opinion, by something called the Corporate Equity Index. The Corporate Equity Index, think it's called CEI for short. Think of that like a social credit score for corporations. That's why these corporations, once pillars of Western society, and I'm talking Anheuser-Busch, which is the parent company of Bud Light, Disney, Walmart, not so much Walmart, more Kmart, and what's the company I'm thinking of? Target, more Target for sure, and companies like that. And we've got Tractor Supply for a brief period, and then John Deere Tractor, lots of those types of companies. I firmly believe, left to their own, they would just focus on corporate profits and doing what works in order for them to stay marketable and profitable. But they're being forced into these types of behaviors. It's important for us to understand a little bit of that. You don't have to remember the details of what leads to them acting in that way, but we all should be thinking about how we're investing and behaving as a wealthy nation. So there's a lot of money in the United States, and we talk about this often. It is being siphoned off as we speak. Wall Street and globalist banks are siphoning money out of Western society, Western small business. Banks are collapsing, etc., and that's by design. We're being really bled dry. That's what's the term for it that I'm looking for. It's basically a big, great taking of money that's being siphoned out of our economy and put into the growth of communist Far East economies. That's backward, broken, and wrong. We should be funding Western values and things that we believe in. So I'm probably preaching to the choir. Unless you're new to UnWoke, you know that is what we're after. And no, I want to proactively answer a question. We're not isolationist. I do believe that there should be global economy, and there's lots of room for great growth in countries all over the world, and that includes the great people of China. I know it's kind of hard at this point because Communist Party has their tentacles in so much and they control so much. But the people of China, and lots of them, are clamoring for a free society, and they're really just crushed. A lot of people are escaping communist China and coming to places that, like the United States, to enjoy freedom. And we should be embracing that on a global level. We should be encouraging that. I'm not saying that we should only invest in the United States. We should have global investments, but a lot of that, it's completely broken and inverted. So the narrative right now that's being pushed in the world of finance is that we should be okay with all of our money, virtually all of our money, going into mega cap globalist companies, most of which are funneling huge amounts of money into far left countries like communist China. Just keep using them as an example. But there are places and pockets all over the world where there are freedom loving individuals and small businesses that are craving capital right now. They're starved for capital. Here in the US, we have something like 60% of small business restaurants were driven out of business over the last 5 or 6 years. We have just cash starved small business everywhere. It's all over the place. It's because all of our money is being diverted into these kind of the war machine and communist China and places like it. We need to put our foot down. That's where we are. That's what UnWoke is. And we need to germinate and fund small business venture and reasonable, freedom-loving, pro-capitalist. That's the key we're looking for here. Capitalism. Capitalism exists and will thrive on a global level. But right now, capitalism is think of it like a boa constrictor. There is a crushing narrative that is funneling our money into the far left and out of capitalism. I think that's probably a pretty clear way to put it. By the way, if any part of this is unclear, hit me up in the notes, send a message. A lot of people, and I don't blame you, you may be uncomfortable posting on the public forums, the public platforms where this video and ones like it are available, but do keep sending me those direct messages, and I will respond in the general, and because other people probably have the same questions. So when we fund capitalism, and let's be honest about where we are here and what this means, capitalism, like no other system ever, capitalism works. It gets money into communities, into societies, and it funds the people wherever they are. And that means certainly the United States. Let's bring back capitalism. And it leads to prosperity for many, many individuals. It's that ladder that allows people to climb from virtually nothing, from having almost no means, to working hard, trying and succeeding. The alternative is socialism and communism, which thrives because there's a small number of people that want money, power, and control. We need to reverse the intention of that narrative and be like those people who challenge the education system, the jabs, medicine, what we call healthcare. If you're one of those people that questions those things, dive into UnWoke. So I want to outline now what we're building and what this looks like, because there's a ton of great stuff out there that is built. It's ready for you. It's just waiting for you to jump right in. Now let's think in terms of these big mega globalist companies. They all started long, long ago. They've gotten veered onto the wrong path, but they started as a small business venture, all of them without exception. So these big money managers, and let's just sort of run through a hypothetical. If there's let's say 40 years ago, somebody decided on a method to build a portfolio. And then eventually they get enough clients, they have a whole bunch of money invested in their idea for money management, and then they might launch a mutual fund. And then that mutual fund might turn into 5 and then 10 and then 20 different mutual funds with different missions and objectives. And then eventually they have a whole distribution network, and then they start hiring advisors to go out and sell their mutual fund and people to market their concepts and the ideas. And then years ago, they might have offered something like a 401k. That was common. So their 401k would be all of their mutual funds. That's how a lot of these big companies grew. And they grew fast, and they gained a lot of money. And then eventually they just started using the capital to buy up other small companies, and they would bring in other money managers. They would buy maybe a payroll company to add payroll, and then do direct deposit for IRA and 401k accounts. And eventually we got to the point where we are now, where they are designed to look and feel super, super easy. Like, they have beautiful websites. I've mentioned before, there's one company in particular that I'm aware of that years ago spent about $100 million on a postcard campaign, because they figured out that by doing postcards at a certain time and timing them well, they could make massive more money in multiples on their $100 million investment. That's the way these companies work. Well, that was fine for a while, but now that we know that many of these companies, or most all of them, they've caved, and they have allowed their mission to go far left, and to take your money and invest it into far left companies, causes, and countries. So the mission here is to create parallel economy, and we're well underway. There is some really cool stuff. I'm going to give some examples, and there are lots of them. If you've been watching Dr. Ben Carson and the country music legend John Rich, they formed a bank called Old Glory. We're actually in the process of moving our accounts from many different other banks into Old Glory, having great business experience with our business accounts, and the people there are wonderful. If you do payment processing online, you probably know that the payment processing company PayPal stands publicly accused of being super woke. You don't want to give them your money, because they use that money against American interests, in my opinion, and I'm not alone in that. So the TV and podcast personality Dan Bongino built a competitor called Align Pay. These are just scratching the surface. We have a bunch of stuff that we have built at UnWoke to help address these questions and to help build the parallel economy. Pretty much everything that we do is just public information. Wherever you are, whoever your advisor is, or whatever firm you work with, take this information and run it by them. Just know that, just like those doctors who were incentivized to give you all sorts of strange answers and to evade questions during the jabs, and let's face it, many of them were very convincing. I have every expectation that if you're working with one of those Wall Street firms, that you're going to get some vague, misleading, misguiding sorts of answers to try and keep you invested the way that you are. Well, just know that that whole environment is pay to play, and it is an incentive-based system across the board. I can give you tens of thousands of examples, many of which are personal examples. I got to experience it. If a financial professional works for one of those firms and challenges that, or questions the way that they are supposed to be steering their clients' investment dollars, there is, you know what to pay. You are not looked upon favorably. So the push is to get everybody funneled into far left companies, causes, and countries. But you can fight back. Take the information, and if you're not getting the answers that you need, that you agree with, that jive with the truth that we bring you in this program and ones like it, then go elsewhere, switch. It can be to some of the people that we're lining up and delivering to you. It could be anybody, it doesn't matter. Um, we have we have the folks at Inspire. We've got, I'll include it in the at the end of this video. You can go to those folks over there. Matt and Drew at Inspire are awesome. And if you like them, well, first thing to know is they're offering you this freebie. They will do an impact report for you, free, no strings attached, that shows you the impact that your financial life, that your portfolio is having on the world. Take that and run with it. If you do end up liking Matt and Drew, hoorah, that's wonderful. Some of the their revenue from that relationship actually comes back to pay us and keep programs like this one going. But we appreciate that. We have the world's first financial PMA. That's actually financialpma.com. So anybody in there, that's a membership driven. If you're not familiar with financial, or with a PMA rather, if you're not familiar with PMA, look it up. They're growing like crazy in all kinds of different arenas, like agricultural co-ops and medical practitioners, healthcare, you name it. A lot of different groups and people are now engaging in private membership associations. One of the key linchpins to that, and one of the objectives, is to try and create some privacy for you. There is no privacy. Expect no privacy in the world of finance. There is such hunger for data mining people's financial lives. Expect wherever you are that the pressure from those Wall Street types of firms to turn over your information, and that's everything they can find and get their hands on, to turn it over to big brother, big government, however you want to define it, that there's massive money for them to make off of data mining you. Private membership associations work differently. My hope is that many more private membership associations grow and evolve and develop. In the insurance world, we have Steve Cobrin. Look up Steve. He's been in some prior episodes and is a good friend. He is a life insurance representative, and he's not woke. He's one of those people who's actually so not woke that he created the Gallery of Freedom Fighters. And I was honored to be listed on that. I was interviewed for the Gallery of Freedom Fighters. But these are just the tip of the iceberg. Annuities. If you have an annuity, switch out of the high fee annuity. Let's get a part of the objective of all of this stuff is to get as much of the fee structure as possible removed from these accounts. People don't know that in most every environment, there is a fee-based alternative to the fee-riddled annuities. Annuities they're mostly based on a big commission structure, which handcuffs people. It loads up your annuity with high fees. There are alternatives to that. Years ago, I started something called fee-based annuity. It was an offshoot of fee-based 401k. That's another program entirely. That's actually what really launched my career, was reshaping the whole marketplace of 401k plans and how they work. And I leveraged that to start fee-based annuity. But the point is, between all of this, and I'm pressuring annuities, I'm working with and putting some pressure on money managers. I'm encouraging them to go unwoke. And they'll listen to me. I've got a lot of friends all throughout finance, but you know what they listen to more than just my voice? Money. It's all about money to them. So as soon as we, the people, let them know in clear and certain terms, we don't want our money diverted into far left companies, causes, and countries. And we put our foot down, not just boycotting Anheuser-Busch or Target or whatever, but really changing the format and structure of our portfolio. That means your investments. Get your investments out of the woke garbage and stop funding these corporations that clearly have no interest in Western values, Judeo-Christian principles, and capitalism. It's a stranglehold. They're crushing capitalism as we speak. So that's where we are. Thank you for bearing with me through this sort of difficult episode. we're making do without power today because we have a major power outage, as I mentioned in the beginning. But I didn't want a week to go by without dropping an episode and just saying how do. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of UnWoke Academy. By the way, an afterthought, if you are able to sponsor this platform, very likely offers sponsorship opportunity. Also check out UnWoke Academy. If you're able to sponsor us and support this episode and ones like it and the research that we do financially, great. If not, don't worry. Just help us spread the word. Thanks again for listening.